the best thing you can do is to be exceptionally good at something. If you're the best doctor in town, if you're the best lawyer in town, if you're the best whatever it may be, no matter whether people are paying you with $1 zillion, you find your passion. Now, I get to work in a job that I love.
Your plan sounds to me a lot like saving up sex for your old age.
Warren Buffett's best career advice can be summarized into 4 main ideas. Be the best at what you do. Enjoying what you do. Have passion doing it. And don't postpone important career choice. For how he said it and the context in which he said it, please watch until the end to find out. And please share and subscribe if you like this video.
I really want to talk about what's on your mind, so we're going to do a Q&A in a minute. There are a couple questions I always get asked. People always say, well, who should I go to work for when I get out? And I've got a very simple answer. We may elaborate more on this as we go along, but the real thing to do is to get going for some institution or individual that you admire. I mean, it's crazy to take in between jobs just because they look good on your resume or because you get a little higher starting pay. I was up at Harvard a while back, and a very nice young guy picked me up at the airport, Harvard Business School attendee, and he said, look, I went to undergrad here, and then I worked for X and Y and Z, and now I've come here. And he said, I thought it would really round up my resume perfectly if I went to work now for a big management consulting firm. And I said, well, is that what you want to do? And he said, no, but he said, that's the perfect resume. And I said, well, when are you going to start doing what you like? And he said, well, I'll get to that someday. And I said, well, your plan sounds to me a lot like saving up sex for your old age. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. I told that same group, I said, go to work for whomever you admire the most. And I said, you can't get a bad result. You'll jump out of bed in the morning and you'll be having fun. And the dean called me up a couple of weeks later. He said, what'd you tell those kids? He said, they're all becoming self-employed. So you've got to temper that advice a little bit.
The name of the book is Tap Dancing to Work.
Tap Dancing to Work, which is how Warren has always described how he approaches his job at Berkshire.
You find your passion. You find your passion. I was very, very lucky to find it, when I was 7 or 8 years old, and fortunately, my children have found their passion. One son loves farming like nothing else. One son loves music like everything else, and all 3 of them love philanthropy and what they get to do. You're lucky in life when you find it, and you can't guarantee you're going to find it in your first job out. But I always tell the college students that come out, I say, take the job that you would take if you were independently wealthy. You're going to do well at it.
Dear Mr. Buffett and Mr. Munger, my name is Daphne. I'm from NYC, and this is my 5th annual shareholders meeting.
Well, we appreciate you coming. We do, sincerely.
As you know, for the past 4 consecutive months, we've been going through inflation, with an inflation rate north of 7% for the first time since 1982. You both have experienced this before, from 1970 to 1975, at a time where your portfolio took paper losses, and yet you made some of the best investment choices of your life. Reflecting on that, my question is, if you had to pick one stock to bet on.
You kind of snuck up on us there for a second.
And be resilient in the inflation, which would you choose? And what specifically enables that stock to do very well and might very likely be a difficult market?
Well, I'll tell you something even better than that one stock. Maybe we'll get to one stock, but the best thing you can do is to be exceptionally good at something. If you're the best doctor in town, if you're the best lawyer in town, if you're the best whatever it may be, no matter whether people are paying you with $1 zillion or paying you, they're going to give you some of what they produce in exchange for what you deliver. And if you've got it, and if you're the one they pick out
to do any particular activity, sing or play baseball or be their lawyer, whatever it may be. Whatever abilities you have can't be taken away from you. They can't actually be inflated away from you. Somebody else will give you some of the wheat they produce or the cotton or whatever it may be, and they will trade you for the skill you have. So the best investment by far is anything that develops yourself. And again, not taxed, so that's what I would do.
I got some advice for you too. When you have your own retirement account and your friendly advisor suggests you put all the money into Bitcoin, just say no.
Yeah. Nobody can take away from you the talent you have. I mean, and the truth is that the world will always be willing. They'll need to do something, and some people will not have skills, and they will get less of the product of the society than somebody who has other skills. And sometimes that has something to do with education, but a good bit of the time it doesn't have anything to do with education. I mean, but to figure out what you'd like to be, and figure out how, and what you'd like to be is what you're going to likely be good at. And the world will always need somebody on that tube to tell us what's going on. So, study Becky Quick or somebody and figure out, what makes her good, and what you sort of naturally bring to the game. I mean, I could have. Who's the guy that says you got to spend 10,000 hours doing this or that? And then Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell, would say just spend 10,000 hours on something. Well, I could have spent 10,000 hours trying to become a heavyweight boxer, but I don't think I'd have felt very good at the end of the 10,000 hours. I mean, you stumble in to what you really like doing, what you're good at, what is useful to society, and then it doesn't make any difference whether the dollar bill, is now worth, in terms of the purchasing power, a cent or a half a cent or 1/100th of a cent. If you're the best doctor in town, they'll bring you chickens, whatever they may do, but they can't take it away from you. And my guess is that if you've come to 5 meetings, you've got a very good future ahead of you. I mean, that shows it. It self-selects. I mean, so if you want to sell a piece of yourself, that we'll buy that as the best investment we can make. We'll take 10% of your future earnings, and we'll give you a cash payment now, and we'll have a terrific asset. And you can have 100% of your future earnings, and if you make it, develop your talent, maybe you'll be a great dancer. People pay money to watch great dancers. We had Fred Astaire and his sister Adele that came from Omaha. Their name was Austerlitz then, but they could dance. And Adele did whatever she did with it, moved to England, and Fred Astaire went on to do a whole bunch of other things, and Ginger Rogers had to do it all the same backwards in high heels, and she didn't get paid as much because she was a woman. But you're going to do just fine. I bet a lot of money on you. Our lives aren't that different. You'll get decent medical care if something happens to you, and I'll get decent medical care. The only thing we do is we travel differently. I ride around this little plane, and I love it. And that takes money. But if you leave that aside, we travel differently. But other than travel, I think about it. Think, what can I do that you can't do? Now, I get to work in a job that I love, but I've always worked in a job I love. I loved it when I loved it just as much when it was a big deal if I made $1,000. And I urge you to work in jobs you love. I mean, I think you're out of your mind if you keep taking jobs that you don't like because you think it'll look good on your resume. I was with a fellow at Harvard the other day who was taking me over to talk, he was 28, and he was telling me all what he'd done in life, and which was terrific. And then I said, what are you going to do next? And he said, well, he said, after I get out my MBA, he says, I think maybe I ought to go to work for a management consulting firm because it'll look good on my resume. And I said, wait a second, you've been 28, you've been doing all these things. I mean, you've got a resume that's 10 times as good as anybody I've ever seen it already. I said, if you take another job you don't like, just for, I said, isn't that a little like saving up sex for your old age? You know, I mean, there comes a time when you ought to just start doing what, you know, you ever got, so I think I got the point across to him. But you ought to take a job. When you get out here, take a job you love. Don't take a job that you think is going to look good on your resume. Take a job you love. You may change it later on, but you'll jump out of bed in the morning. I mean, when I got out of Columbia, the first thing I tried to go to work for Graham immediately. I offered to go to work for him for nothing. He said I was overpriced, but I kept pestering him. I went out to Omaha and I sold securities for 3 years, and I kept writing him and giving him ideas and doing all these things. Finally, I went to work for him for a couple of years, and it was a great experience. But I always really worked in a job. I worked in a job that I loved doing. And you should really take a job that if you were independently wealthy, you would take. That's the job to take, because that's the one that you're going to have great fun in. You'll learn something. You'll be excited about it, and you can't miss. You may go do something else later on, but you'll get way more out of it. And I don't care what the starting salary is or anything of the sort. I don't know how I got off on that, but there I am. So I do think that if you think you're going to be a lot happier if you've got 2x instead of x, you're probably making a mistake. I mean, you ought to find something you like that works with that, and you'll get in trouble if you think that making 10x or 20x is the answer to everything in life, because then you will do things like borrow money when you shouldn't, or maybe cut corners on things that your employer wants you to cut corners on. Or it just doesn't make any sense. You won't like it when you look back on it.